Hello students, this is Dr. Dakshayini, Assistant Professor from Department of Zoology, Maharani Science College for Women, Bangalore. Students, in this session, let us understand migration of birds under paper 3 Chordata. The contents as follows: Introduction, definition of bird migration, types of bird migration, causes of bird migration, and also disadvantages of bird migration. Students, as we all know that individual organisms often move about in their environment in response to various types of stimuli. But when such movements, if it results in either temporarily or permanently leaving one home range and establishing their home in another place, such type of movements is called as migration. Yes, the term or the word migration comes from the Latin word, that is migrare, means to travel, otherwise meaning animals going from one place to another. In this aspect, Kant explains migration as it is a periodic passing of animals from one place to another. When you talk about birds, many birds have the inherent quality to move from one place to another to obtain the advantages of the favorable conditions. In birds, migration means it is a two-way journey. One is onward journey from the home to the new places, and getting back, that is back journey from the new places to their original home. When you define migration according to L. Thompson, bird migration may be described as changes of habitat periodically recurring and alternating in direction, which tend to secure optimum environmental conditions at all times. Where bird migration is more or less a regular, extensive movements between their breeding regions and their wintering regions. Students, when you talk about birds, birds are the only animals that have feathers which help them fly, as they have two wings instead of arms and two legs. And there are nearly 9,000 kinds of birds in the world, and they are of different colors, shapes and sizes, and they eat different sort of food. And bird migration is the seasonal movements between a breeding location and a location where it survives when not breeding, where these movements are usually irregular, are in only one direction, and are termed variously as nomadism, invasions, dispersal or eruptions, where migration is marked by its annual seasonality. In this aspect, birds can be broadly grouped into two categories, that is migratory birds and resident birds. As I've told you, majority of birds have this inherent quality to move from one place to another to obtain the advantages of the favorable conditions. So such birds are called as the migratory birds. There are some birds such as bobwhite and ruffled sand grouse. However, they do not migrate at all and they remain throughout the year in a country. Such birds are called as the resident birds. When you observe the migratory birds, these migratory birds cover thousands of miles in their periodic seasonal journey, where migration is a remarkable device to obtain the advantages of the favorable conditions in more northerly regions only during the summer, whereas migration occurs during the particular period of the year and the birds are usually follow the same route. You must be wondering, why do birds migrate? It's because the changing seasons can transform a comfortable environment of a bird into an unfavorable one. So, in order to fetch the favorable conditions, that is, this is all in terms of getting the good food and water supply, so they can dwell or disappear from one place and go in search of the favorable conditions. That is nothing but the food and the water supply can dwindle or disappear, or the plant cover can vanish, and competition with other animals can increase their force to migrate from one place to another. In this aspect, when you observe, migration involves especially, that is, escaping the area entirely because of the powers of flight. Most birds adapt to seasonal changes in the environment by migrating. Let us see the types of bird migration, where, as we know that all birds do not migrate, but all species are subject to periodical movements of varying extent. The birds which live in northern part of the hemisphere have greatest migratory power. So you can see the types of bird migration, and that can be listed out as follows. One is latitudinal bird migration, the other one is longitudinal, the third one is latitudinal or vertical, the fourth one is partial, the fifth one is total, sixth one is vagrant or irregular bird migration, the seventh one is seasonal, eighth is diurnal, and the ninth one is nocturnal. These are the different types of bird migration we come across in the world. Let us see what is this latitudinal migration. The latitudinal migration usually means the movement from the north to south or vice versa, where most birds live in the land masses of the northern temperatures and subarctic zones, where they get facilities for nesting and feeding during summer. Whereas during winter, when the northern hemisphere becomes covered with ice and snow, these birds move towards now south for their shelter, for seeking shelter. Like several North American and Eurasian birds cross the equator to spend winter in deeper and warmer parts of the South America and Africa. Whereas when you see the examples, the American golden plover, where it passes the 9 months of winter by covering 8,000 miles south in the plains of Argentina. So they enjoying the two summers each year and knows not a hint of winter. The other example is roughbits at Siberia, where it travels to Great Britain, Africa, plains of India and Sri Lanka by traveling a distance of 6,000 miles. An opposite but lesser movements also occurs in from the southern hemispheres. Example, the cuckoo breeds from India and spends the summer at Southeast Africa, and it covers a distance of about 7,250 kilometer. And there are some tropical birds migrate during rainy season to the outer tropics to breed and return to the central tropics in dry season. And many marine birds also make considerable migration. That is example puffinus, that is a great seashore water which breeds on small islands and migrates as far as towards the Greenland in May and returns after few months, where it covers a distance of 1300 kilometers. When you see the penguins, where they migrate by swimming and cover a considerable distance, a few hundred miles. When you see the Sterna paradisea, which is an Arctic tern, breeds in the northern temperature region and migrates to the Arctic zone along the Atlantic. The longitudinal migration. The longitudinal migration occurs when the birds migrate from east to west and vice versa. Example, the starlings, a resident of East Europe and the West Asia, migrate towards the Atlantic coast. Whereas the California gulls, it is a resident and breed in the Utah, where migrate westward to winter in the Pacific coast. When you see the altitudinal migration, the altitudinal migration occurs in mountainous regions. Many birds inhabiting the mountain peaks migrate to lower lands during winter. Example, the golden plover starts from Arctic tundra and goes up to the plains of Argentina, covering a distance of about 11,250 km, where the birds either migrate in flocks or in pairs. Example, swallows and storks migrate a distance of 9,650 km from northern Europe to South Africa. Even the rough breeds at Siberia where it travels to Great Britain, Africa, India and Ceylon by traveling a distance of 9,650 kilometers. When you see the partial migration, all the members of a group of birds which do not take part in migration, only several members of a group take part in migration. That is example, blue jays of Canada and northern part of the United States travel southwards to blend with the sedentary populations of the southern states of USA. Coots, examples are the coots and spoonbills of this country, may example given to the partial migration. Total migration means when all the members of a species take part in the migration, it is called the total migration. Vagrant or irregular migration means when some of the birds disperse to a short or long distance for safety and food, it is called as the vagrant or irregular migration. Examples, herons can be given as an example of vagrant or irregular migration, and other examples are the black stork, glossy ibis, spotted eagle and bee eater can be given the best example for the vagrant or irregular migration. Daily migration means where some birds make daily journey from their nest by the influence of environmental factors, and such as temperature, light and humidity. This kind of a migration is called as the daily migration. The best examples can be given the crows, herons and the starlings. When you see the seasonal migration, where some birds migrate at different seasons of the year for in search of food or for the purpose of breeding, and it is called seasonal migration. Examples are cuckoos, swifts, swallows, where they migrate from the south to the north during summer, and these birds are called as the summer visitors. Again, there are some birds like snow bunting, redwing, shorelark, grey plover, which migrate from north to south during winter. and they are called as the winter visitors. Coming to the nocturnal and diurnal flight, that is diurnal migration, where many larger birds like crows, robins, swallows, hawks, and they migrate during daytime in search of food. These birds are called as the diurnal birds and generally migrate in flocks. Nocturnal bird migration means some small sized birds of the passerine groups like sparrow, warblers, where they migrate in darkness. That's why they are called as the nocturnal birds. The darkness of the night gives them protection from their enemies. You must be thinking, what are the causes of migration? Why do they migrate and what makes them to migrate? When you see, most of the species of birds migrate more or less on a schedule and follow the routes in a regular fashion. The actual reason or causative factor determining the course and direction of migration are not clearly known. But to some extent, to understand what might be the causes behind the migration, you can see the following uh, reasons behind for causes of migration. One is the instinct and gonadal changes, where it is widely accepted that the impulse to migrate in birds is possibly instinctive and the migration towards the breeding grounds is associated with gonadal changes. The other one is causes may be scarcity of food and day length, where scarcity of food and shortening of daylight and increase of cold are believed to stimulate migration in birds, where the migration in birds depends upon two important factors. One is stimulus and the guidance. In that aspect, when you see scarcity of food and fall of daylight are believed to produce endocrinal changes which initiates the bird migration. The third one is the photoperiodism, that is the increase of day length includes birds migration, that is the day length affects the pituitary and pineal glands and also it causes the growth of the gonads which secrete sex hormones that are the stimulus for migration. Examples in India, Siberian crane, geese, swan, those they just come from the Central Asia Himalayas and begin to return from March and onwards with the increase of day length. Coming to the seasonal variation might be the reason behind, where the north to south migration of birds takes place under stimulus from the internal condition of the gonads which are affected by the seasonal variation. Light also plays an important role causing the bird migration, where many experiments have been conducted to prove that light plays an important role in the development of gonads. If the gonads undergo regression, the urge for migration may not be felt. So, even the seasonal changes in illumination appears to be crucial factor for determining migration. That is, the instinct behaviors like migration, breeding, molting are phasic occurrences in the annual cycle which are controlled by the endocrine system. The other important aspects with respect to bird migration is that guiding mechanism in bird navigation. In that aspect, when you observe, for more than a century, or the celestial navigators of the birds have fascinated the ornithologist that different explanations have been advanced to explain how birds navigate, and it is difficult to generalize on the means of orientation and navigation in migration, where the different groups of birds with the different modes of existence have evolved different meaning of finding their ways from one place to another. Apart from this, there are other reasons, maybe. That is, one is fat deposition. Migratory birds become greedy and fat is deposited in the subcutaneous regions of the body, where the fat deposition plays an important role in the migration of birds. And birds, those migrate a long distance, reserve enough fat which provides the energy in their journey and helps the birds to reach its destination, where they are follow a particular route. After fat deposition, restlessness is seen among the birds for migration. The other reason is inherited instinct, where birds that take part in the migration or follow a more or less definite goal evidently possess inherent instinct, where both the directions and the goal must have been implanted in the bird's genetic code when a population can adjust to a particular location or the environment. In this aspect, you can also observe that where the experienced birds lead the flock. That is, old and experienced birds leads the way and thereby lead the whole route and shows the whole route to the younger generations. Examples: swans, geese, and the cranes. The other examples are starlings of Berlin find their ways back to their nesting places from about 2000 kilometers away. There are many theories regarding the phenomenon of bird migration. Like, how does this bird migration takes place and how do they migrate? So with this aspect, there are various theories which are proposed by the ornithologist to explain the phenomenon of bird migration. One among them is the Earth's magnetic field, where the magnetic field as the guiding factor for the bird's migration. Some ornithologists believe that about existence of a magnetic sense as the important factor in the power of geographical orientation, and this theory was proposed by Eagle in 1947 and 1951. Eagle were suggested that birds are sensitive and they are guided by the Earth's magnetic field. And the other important aspect is that the Coriolis force arising from the orientation of the Earth plays the guiding role in migration of birds. Thereby, it can be explained that can birds detect such minute differences in the Earth's magnetic field, and can these forces affect the bird's behavior? For which attempts to demonstrate by many experimental evidences have not supported the eagle's experiment, but the experiments in which the Earth's magnetic field was changed had no effect on the direction which the birds undertook. The other theory, which is proposed by the Gustav Kramer in Germany, where he says that sun the guiding agent in diurnal migration, where they conducted experiments on the pigeons and some wild birds, where these birds use the sun as the compass and they possess a time sense or the internal clock which allows them to take account of motion of the sun across the sky. In other theory says that stars as the guiding agent in nocturnal migration, where the saucer performed experiments on white-throat warblers to give an insight to the problem, where the Tsar put the birds in a cage placed in a planetarium having an artificial replica of the natural sky. When the light of the planetarium was poorly illuminated, that is, when the stars were not visible, the warblers failed to orient themselves. One more theory, that the compass and the internal clock in bird migration, where this theory is being established that the young birds caught during the migration, when released afterwards, follow exactly the original route in their undisturbed fellows followed. And this phenomena suggested the presence of a sort of compass the birds use during the navigation. And the existence of biological clocks is a property of living organisms, where it is not confined to animals. It is found in plants and even in the simple cells too. Besides all this, many of our bodily functions have a rhythm for their own, and these are possibly controlled by an interclock of which we are normally unaware of it. Let us see what are the disadvantages of bird migration. Many young birds are not able to reach the destination because they die during the course of the continuous and tiresome journey. And due to sudden changes in the climate, such as storms and hurricanes, where the strong current of wind, fog are the causes for the death of a sizable number of migrants. The other disadvantage of bird migration is that sometimes man-made high towers and the high lighthouses can cause the death of the migratory birds. At the important point when you see the disadvantages of bird migration is that man themselves are responsible for the death of a migrants, where they shoot at these poor birds just for their own leisure and amusement. Students, hope you could understand migration of birds in detail in this session. These are the references for your reference. Thank you.